Wi-Fi here.
On your iPad.
Hello, welcome.
Give me your iPad.
Welcome, everyone. We're just going to shortly let everybody in, and I want to thank you all for making the journey. It's good to see so many of you in person, especially on such a lovely day. Can we please let everyone in on Zoom? Thank you. Is everyone let in, please? Thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's lovely to be able to see you on such a beautiful day today. There's lots of people in the room, and thank you to everybody also joining us online. Just some quick housekeeping rules. Can I remind everybody, even if you have a different opinion to somebody else, can we be polite and no slander? And just to let you know that the live stream itself will go up about 2 hours after we finished recording today. Can we start off with a tribute, please, to the late Sir Ben Helfgott, MBE. And it is with my deepest sorrow and my profound honour to be able to say a few words in memory of this simply incredible man who meant so much to all of us. So many tributes have already been paid to him over the last 10 days, and it was amazing at such short notice how many people came to the Lavoya. His story is very well known, and as a boy, he was incarcerated in the Piotrków ghetto, and it was the first ghetto created by the Nazis in Europe before later experiencing life in concentration camps. Ben lost his father, his mother, and his youngest sister in the Shoah, and he came to this country in 1945, aged 15 years old, having experienced so much, with the group of child Holocaust survivors who became known as the Boys. The Board of Deputies is simply honoured by its close association with Sir Ben and the Helfgott family, and he served for many years as a deputy for the 45 Aid Society, which was an organisation that he founded and chaired for so many years. And this was set up to help hundreds of Holocaust survivors who came to the UK after the war. His wife, Arza, was also a deputy for that organisation, and we are honoured to have his son, Michael, as a deputy also for that organisation today. And I know that he wants to be able to say a few words. Morris, his eldest son, also served as a deputy in the past for World Jewish Relief, and in its previous iteration as the Central British Fund, and he helped to bring Sir Ben to these shores after the war. Sir Ben was simply a force of human nature, as many of us know, and he's one of the UK's greatest Jews. He became a champion weightlifter and represented Britain as one of only 2 Holocaust survivors at the Maccabi Games, and subsequently for 2 Olympic Games. That was absolutely incredible. And his physical strength was still present right into his 90s. And I recall just a few years ago at the Claims conference, seeing him carry his own heavy suitcase, waving away any offers from me and anybody else to be able to carry it for him. His internal strength was far greater, and to have been through what he went through and be the kind of man he was is nothing short of miraculous. Sir Ben, was a great unifier, and he was a man of incredible energy and drive. He was simply involved in every single Holocaust remembrance and education initiative in this country. That includes the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, the Holocaust Education Trust, Yad Vashem UK, the UK delegation of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and he was involved in all of them. He gave his life and dedication to holding senior positions in each. He was also very closely involved in the work of the Claims Conference, and in 2002 was involved in key negotiations as part of a very important delegation. And he served for many years on their board. And when I was at the Claims Conference during the last week, I cannot stress enough the sadness and admiration that every single member of the board and the staff had for Sir Ben. His loss has been felt not just in the UK, but around the world. Personally, I was also very fortunate to have benefited from his advice and support as soon as I became president. And I know this is a feeling shared by past presidents as well. Those who were present last Sunday evening at Hampstead Synagogue will also have heard and seen the emotion from the Helfgott family by reading the letter from His Majesty the King, which expressed his deep sadness at Sir Ben's passing. So again, on behalf of the Board of Deputies, our deepest sympathies are with Sir Ben's wife, Arza, his son, Maurice, Michael, and Nathan, his sister and fellow Holocaust survivor, Marla Tribic, and the entire Helfgott family. May Sir Ben's name be remembered for eternal blessing. Zichrono livracha. Thank you. Could we ask Michael, please, Helfgott, to come to the stand? Thank you so much for coming today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marie. I think my father would actually smile because I came in just as Marie started talking. So I think we can say just about late or just about on time. My father was many good things, but I'm not sure timekeeping was his best thing. And I didn't want to inherit that, but maybe I did. Marie, your words were absolutely beautiful, and thank you so much for that. On behalf of my mother, Arza, my brothers, Maurice and Nathan, my aunt, Marla, and all the whole family, thank you to the whole community for your tributes and messages to us. They've been of tremendous support, and it's made it really a joyful week, actually. Much has been written and said about my father this week. And so I wanted, whilst I was here with you at the plenary meeting of the board, to focus for a moment on Ben, who would have loved me being here as a deputy today, Ben at the Board of Deputies. Ben was involved, as Marie said, in many communal organizations through the years, most notably for 70 years for his beloved 45A Society, the group of survivors who came to this country in 1945, who were collectively known as the boys. Even the girls amongst them were also the boys. And it was as a representative of the 45A Society that Ben served for nearly 40 years as a deputy from 1982 until just 2 years ago. The Board of Deputies, with its authority and long institutional history, and with its broad democratic and diverse structure, gave my father and survivors a more significant presence, not only in our community, but also at higher governmental and even international levels. In the earlier days, there was less interest in the survivors than there is today, but the board listened and acted, doing great work in the area of Holocaust education and remembrance. Ben was very much at the center of it as chairman of the board's Yad Vashem committee, working side by side with each successive president, all of whom were of the highest quality and who he personally became close to and supported, and working with the vice presidents, the deputies, and the staff of the board, the excellent staff. Ben had the utmost seriousness for all the sacred work. He was entirely unpolitical, and whilst remaining clear in his principles, he was very fair and brave enough to understand that whilst others could have opposing views, they could travel on the same journey together in the same direction. As Marie said, he was a great unifier. Through the Board of Deputies and new organisations which the board promoted, so much has been achieved over the last decades in the area of Holocaust education and remembrance. And my father was very, very proud to have been a deputy for so long. I have no doubt that he would say to all of us today, be strong and keep doing all the important and good things we do, because we should not underestimate, as the Board of Deputies, the importance of our doing so and the positive impact that we have and will continue to have. Thank you to everybody. It has been a celebration for my father of his life this week. And really, we are grateful to all the people on Zoom and the people here today, to Marie, to the board, and so many of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Unfortunately, there is also a passing of the late Lord Stanley Clinton Davis. And we've asked Jerry Lewis, would you like to come to the stand, please, to give the tribute?
Jerry Lewis, Hampstead Synagogue, and thank God there's no clock, but I'm going to be very brief. Stanley Clinton Davis was one of a unique set of MPs who served in the House of Commons, Jewish MPs who gave such excellence of service, set a standard for how MPs should behave. The one very special thing about him was he was very quiet, underspoken, soft, modest. Nobody had any complaints about him. He had no enemies. He served the Hackney constituency for a considerable number of years, having previously been a mayor. He knew the patch inside out. He served everybody regardless of political persuasion equally, and he got a very high respect for it. He was part of this cohort of Jewish MPs, especially within the Labour Party, who the then president of the Board of Deputies, Greville Channer, brought into the board to make sure that we had a parliamentary wing almost. They included, of course, Sir Ivan Lawrence, who many of you will remember, but others who made a very big impression on the Jewish community, but had no avenue to express their views about the community. People like Ian Mercado, who was known as the House of Commons bookkeeper, Maurice Miller, a doctor from Glasgow, very effective MP, served quite some time on the board, Reg Freeson and Paul Rose, amongst others. We had a large number of Jewish MPs in the Labour Party in those days. And whilst they all had different views about Israel, when Israel was under fire, as it constantly was, nearly all of them, very, very few exceptions, nearly all of them stood up when the time was needed. He had a very different approach to Labour politics. He was a centrist. He managed to serve in 3 Labour administrations, which is quite unique. Most of the Jewish Labour MPs didn't. Of course, I've missed out one important name from that list of Jewish MPs, and that was Eric Moon, Professor Eric Moon. We're so pleased that we've got Gillian, his wife, who served with him in her own way, looking after Eric in his later years. Eric rose to prominence in the Zionist Federation. He also was a vice president of the Board of Deputies, so he took a great interest in the board as well. But Stanley Clinton Davis decided not to go down the road of fighting in the Board of Deputies for a position. He was always available and was often used by subsequent presidents for wise advice. He was, amongst other things, a lawyer. And even though the obituaries don't mention it, one of the companies he worked for a long time was Mishkon's. And those of you who may remember the name Mishkon will remember he too was a vice president of the Board of Deputies. He had a very nasty problem when it came to his seat being condensed with the two other Hackney seats. And he had to fight a gentleman called the name of Ernie Roberts, who was a very left-wing Labour MP. And the left wing were just gaining ascendancy at that period of time in 1983. And he lost out because Hackney Central disappeared and the other two seats, the MPs kept their seats, which was a great shame. But he went very nobly onto the House of Lords, where he served with equal distinction. But unlike many other MPs, he had a third career. Margaret Thatcher chose him as a commissioner for the EU, where he served 2 terms, and again, without any party politics, was very highly respected. He served as a trade minister in the UK, specialized in shipping, aviation, and other things. And one thing about him, he never complained about his lot. He was very, very well used to Labour politics, but he didn't fight against the impossible fights that were going on in the Labour Party at the time. He was never afraid to bat for Israel, as I said before. And I remember distinctly, he and Maurice Miller went to Beirut in the most troubling of times to see the Lebanese leadership, to see if they could produce some changes in the atmosphere. This is just before the Terry Waite and John McCarthy period, when there was all sorts of problems with Lebanon and Hezbollah. But Stanley Clinton Davis went with a TV camera team from Britain to see what he could do. He came under very great criticism from some people in the community who felt it was not right for him to try and intervene in Lebanese politics on Israel's side, obviously. But he did the best he could. They came back, I remember them turning up at the Zionist Federation conference, which was taking place the day they flew back, and gave an enthralling description of their meetings in Lebanon. He died after a long illness. He leaves his wife, Frances, and 4 children, all of whom carry the Stanley Clinton Davis name, except for the daughters who married, and a very proud legacy of a decent Jew, a mensch, and somebody we were very proud to know, especially me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. That was beautiful. And I think the board has been very, very privileged in having such wonderful people who've really served their communities being part of the board. So thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jerry. Moving on. Can I please ask if there are any comments in relation to the minutes from last time? We haven't received anything in writing. Okay, thank you. We're going to just change the agenda very slightly. Senior Vice President David Mendoza-Wolfson is going to present his paper on the under 35s representation. So I'll hand straight over to David.
Thank you very much. I wasn't sure which microphone to go for there. So I want to keep this as brief as possible to make sure that there's time for questions and answers. Once I have spoken, then James Harris, who put together lion's share of the research on this, is also going to speak. I think that it's pretty clear, and if you don't mind my saying so, in one part from looking around the room today, wonderful as it is, of course, to see you all, that we have a problem at the board when it comes to under 35 representation. We need to do a better job of attracting under 35s to come and sit on the board as both full deputies and, I believe, observers who will then become deputies. And this, to me, is the best way to do it. Now, this is quite a basic proposal. It's a trial. And I think a trial is the best way to go about this. We're going to give it a go. We're going to give under 35 deputies their own body in which they can come up with ways, we can come up with ways to come up with to attract, to engage under 35 Jews and deputies to make sure that they are fully engaged with the board and board process. Now, lots of what's here is similar to what regional deputies have. This is about making sure that underrepresented groups are able to speak for themselves and feed in so that they can be properly represented here. We'll see what works, we'll see what doesn't, and that will be, revised and reformed. That's why we're not going straight in for some kind of constitutional change. We're having a try, we're going to give it a go, see what we can come up with. And with that, I'm more than happy to just hand over to James to speak for a few minutes if he's happy to, and then we'll move over to some questions and answers. Now, I understand James is online, and I hope I haven't put him on the spot too much by saying that he's going to do this. So, James Harris, please.
Can everyone hear me? I assume so. Thank you, David, and I want to say thank you as well for your support on this initiative. Deputies, you sort of likely would have heard me talk in the past about engagement of younger deputies for some time, and so I'll sort of keep this brief, like David said, to make space for questions. But whilst this is sort of proposed on the basis of our own experiences, the actual evidence, like David said, really suggests a similar pattern of just underrepresentation in a lot of different areas in the board. And so like David said as well, while these proposals aren't perfect at this stage, we are keen to trial something and over time refine it to really get the best for under 35 deputies as we possibly can. And yeah, I really think that as a start and hopefully on refining them, these proposals will create a real betterment for the boards and ultimately for under 35 deputies entering the board and for the broader community. I think the community will better from more deputies and more younger deputies having a voice on the board. So yeah, I want to also stress that I suppose this proposal I don't think will or should compete with the already brilliant work that's being done by many in the community to benefit young people, but will instead complement the work being done and will amplify that voice. So like David said, we're happy to answer any questions, but yeah, thank you in the meantime.
Thank you very much. What I should have said is at the end of this, we're going to do a show of hands. What's really important to me, to us, is to make sure that this has the buy-in of the whole plenary. So under 35 deputies, but also the whole of the plenary community. So we will just have a show of hands on this. And with that now, happy to take questions. I see that Carol Abrahams has a question. Carol? Perfect.
Right. Yes. I mean, it's a great idea. Obviously, any sort of assembly like that's a great idea. Is there any chance that that once they've got together, they'll be able to help with outreach, to help those older deputies like me who are trying to persuade younger people in our communities to get interested in the board and maybe stand as deputies themselves, or even under 35 observers? It would be great if they could take that on. I mean, not take it on, but help.
Can they help with outreach? I hope that by showing and empowering our under 35-year-old deputies, they will want to really be ambassadors, advocates for the board. I don't want to speak about what this body will do. What I do hope is that it shows that the board really wants to empower this demographic, and in doing so, I believe they will then become advocates for the board, both formally and informally. So I hope that answers that one, Carol. Should we go to Jerry Lewis, please? Sorry, Joe, Jerry had his hand up first. Don't worry, we'll get to you.
Jerry Lewis Hampstead, and apologies for speaking twice. I wasn't planning to speak so early on. Are you aware, is the general question, and then I'll just make my comments very briefly. I was the one that fought a vicious battle to get the under 35s initiative off the ground. I sorted it out. I thought it through, proposed the constitutional amendments, had fierce fights with especially the then Treasury team at the board because of the cost implications and everything else. But eventually it succeeded and we started having under 35 representatives. So I welcome this idea of an extension. I did try some years ago to give the under 35s a vote. And these are the under 35 observers. And that was defeated. The students led the fight against, couldn't understand why. Never followed that through, but students always are revolting. I'm worried, one area, are you aware? Assembly, great idea, let them talk, let them come to ideas and decisions. But what happens if they decide a policy strictly, but quite strongly in opposition to the board policy? And the best example of that is the legislation which we've got at the moment, dealing with the issue which you're all aware of, Marie has pontificated about on behalf of the board. And yes, and I've just got one other thing to say.
I think that if you don't mind, I
Can
think it's really important that we do try and hold things to time, Jerry. I'm really sorry, but I know that we have timed out.
Say one sentence, just one sentence.
Marie? Sorry, Jerry. I just think that it's really important that we keep these to time. So I do appreciate it. And I should say, if you want to email the rest of that question, I'm more than happy to answer it either to you or in full in my report next time. I wasn't aware that you were the person who spearheaded so much of the work that has led to this. I think that the Under 35 Observer Programme is really important. I know it's not perfect, and I know that lots of people don't believe it to be so. I think that's fine, but I think that this should add a little bit of fire there. Now, on the other bit of your question, which I think was really about policy, the point of this body isn't to be a policy body. It's not going to be a facsimile, a mini plenary. It's not going to have its own defence, international, community divisions. The point of this body, much as with the regional assembly, is to give us the views of under 35 deputies and to help us engage, and indeed engage themselves, under 35 deputies. So I don't think that's a problem. It's good for us to get a good sense of what different demographics believe. And we also have to understand that within each of these demographics, there are going to be a whole load of different views. And this is why I think it's really important that we've made clear that we don't believe that all under 35 deputies are students. I think that's often something that it gets mixed up too much. There's a big difference between 18 to 21-year-olds and say 29 to 35-year-olds. And I think that's really important. Now I'm being urged to move on, but Jerry, do email the rest of that question. We got some more questions and I'm just really keen that we stick to time. So Joe Millis, do you want to come up and ask your question? And then we'll move on to David Safir, Nathan Baroda, and then Sheila Gale. Thank you.
There will be questions. Joe Millis, Bromley Reform Synagogue. I'm all in favour of under 25 participation. I think it's a brilliant idea and it should come as a welcome move. Unfortunately, however, there are two things that I think need to be questioned. Is this not an exercise in co-option? In other words, bringing in people and, quote, domesticating them to the board? The second question is not the Board of Deputies, will under 35s be put off by the fact that this is in effect under the auspices of the Board of Deputies, which quite frankly, in the view of many under 35s, is not exactly attractive, to say the least. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, look, I'm an under 35 and I find the board quite attractive. Look, on the body, I want to read out some of the potential working groups that I know James and Sally, when she was helping lead this as well, looked at. Recruitment of more under 35 deputies and observers, looking into training program for new deputies, looking at the board to encourage member organizations to have youth-specific roles. This is about empowering and engaging. That's what we want to do. And if we're saying domesticating, I don't think that's a bad thing. I want everybody to feel comfortable at the board, no matter their age, no matter their background. I need to move on. Sorry, David. Yep. Great, no problem. David Safir, who is online. Sorry.
Good morning. I think this is an excellent proposal, but I just have one observation and 5 quick questions. The observation is that it's more than interesting and certainly not coincidental that this is proposed by 2 very distinguished under 35s, yourself and of course James, who did such an amazing job, particularly during the Bristol crisis. But 5 questions. It's interesting that you use the word amplify rather than extend. I think the idea that any Jew should speak more loudly is not necessarily quite as attractive as that they should speak more often, but I'll leave you to choose. The second question is this a reaction to the, as it were, positive discrimination, the quotas, which I think are represented by having, for example, 12 UJS deputies. I'm not sure if 12 UJS deputies out of a total of 300 and whatever it is necessarily purely democratic or involves a certain amount of positive discrimination. And the third question, is this body supposed to be a trial body or an ad hoc body simply to deal with the issues to do with raising the profile, the amplifying the voices of under 35s? Because I think if the assembly became a permanent parallel chamber, that would actually not be very good for the governance of the board or its basic reputation. Fourthly, is the real problem not getting selected to be a deputy in the first place? I'm certainly got to hold my hand up and say that at my age, I'm probably typical of my membership, but there are many.
Thank you, David. I'm really sorry, but we've timed out there and I'm going to have to be really strict. 5 questions was a really bold decision to try and get through in 90 seconds. So fair play to you there. I'll try and, I'm really sorry. I was trying to follow. I'm going to just try and take this in as general a sense as I can. Amplify, I think, is a really important voice. We want to make sure that the things that the under 35s are saying and believing are being properly heard. Now, this is a trial body. We want to see what happens and where it goes. I don't necessarily think that this, in what it is, both of the proposals here are what we're going to end up with, but I think that it's a very sensible place to start, and we'll see what works and what doesn't. You're absolutely right that we need to make sure that our constituent bodies are bringing in more under 35s. I'm very proud that my synagogue has, 40% of its deputies, two of its 5 are under 35, including, and I always like to embarrass her, my wife. And so, yes, I think that this is a good trial. We're going to see where it goes, and then hopefully we'll be able to codify something that's really going to work and be bedded in afterwards. I think it might be wise that we now limit, I know that it's probably not going to do this, questions to 60 seconds. I just know there are quite a few and we have quite a busy agenda up ahead still. So Nathan Baroda, do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, David. And it's not necessarily even a question, which is a little bit typical. Just say well done. I think this is really good achievement. Credit to yourself and James, and I hope this will go a long way in terms of giving more young people a voice in the board structures, because that will certainly enhance its representative functions, and it is a really good step. So well done.
Sorry, could you just repeat that last bit? Oh, great. No, thank you. I'm not used to that. It's unbelievable. Thank you, Nathan. Great, Sheila.
Well, you're going to get some more of the same, David, because no if, no buts. This is such a great initiative. I hope to totally support it. We need to have a younger representation, younger voice. We encourage it wherever we can. I look forward to updates about how this is progressing. Heartily applaud it. Well done.
Thank you very much. You're also nice here. I hope that I get the same response in my international report section. This is great. Phil. No, I think we've got Denise up next.
No, it's Phil Rosenberg, Denise Lester, and then Laura Marks and Robert Stone.
Please remember to say your name and constituency.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Phil Rosenberg, Bronsbury Park Synagogue, and for these purposes also a member of the FNO's Deputy Engagement Committee. The first thing I want to say is really well done to both David and James. This is really important. I think anything that engages younger deputies is good, but I think I'd make three additional points to it. First of all, I think some of the elements of disengagement, disenfranchisement are not only felt by younger deputies. So I think worth definitely doing what's going here, but worth thinking about how we apply some of the things to other deputies who may be older than 35, who sometimes feel some of these things too. The second point is structures. I think these are good ideas, the structures, but it's always important to think about how we move from structures to action, and that we don't get lost in that. And you know that I've been a bit frustrated about the parliamentary advocacy day, and that's got stuck. But let's think about how we make sure that we're not just in structures, but we're also thinking about how we channel the energy and enthusiasm into action. And the third point is this, really. I love coming to JW3. I used to be the local councillor for here. But I know we were perhaps supposed to be in less.
I'm really sorry, Phil.
So I just think we've remember the regional deputies as well.
Yeah. So absolutely, this is about making sure that all voices are engaged, and absolutely a number of under 35 deputies are regional deputies. I think that structure is really important. I think that for too long we've been trying to come up with ways to engage under 35s without having a structure, and that means that we, as the board, kind of generally are trying to come up with solutions that aren't necessarily the right solutions. By having the structure, we're going to be able to make sure that the under 35 deputies are really able to feed into the way that we do this. So this is about promoting engagement through structure, not using structure in order to stop engagement. Thank you, Phil. Denise.
David, Denise Lester, South Hampstead Synagogue. First of all, I'd like to say what a brilliant initiative and so well drafted. So well done, well done. And it's a breath of fresh air and also the future of the board. I have two questions. One, how is this going to be marketed? And because we want the reach, and we want to attract the best talent for the future of the board. And well, actually, there's more than two. Two, how are we going to use that talent effectively and bring them through so they actually join formally the organisations, feel motivated, feel that they can contribute, and feel that they can be the leadership of our community. And basically, there needs to be that pull through because the board is ever evolving. I was an under 35 once.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Look, absolutely. This is about empowering, and through empowering, we're going to be able to have those advocates. That means, I hope, that more people under 35 are going to want to join the board, that they're going to see a reason to join the board. So I hope that answers the question there.
I think it also will be helpful and beneficial fundraising wise. So that's why I also say that.
Totally agree. Now, before we move on to Laura Marks, I should say that Sally Patterson, who is of course very close to Laura, really helped. She was as a former deputy, she really helped put together all of this. So I do want to thank her as well. And I'm glad Laura's on this list so I can remember to do so. Laura. Laura can't. Oh.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Hello. Hi, Laura Marks, the Alliance of Jewish Women and their organisations. Thank you for having me on. David, thank you for acknowledging the role of Sally in this. She put a lot of work in. She's now in New York and she'll appreciate that you acknowledge her input. My question is, well, it's not really a question, it's more that it's all very well and great to invite more deputies to get involved, young deputies to get involved, but actually we need to think about how you get them involved, really engaged, and what structures we have currently that prevent them getting engaged. For example, having a meeting between 11:30 and 1:30 on a Sunday afternoon in June. So there are all sorts, and the whole way we run the thing, we need to look more deeply, not just at how we get them to stand, if indeed they will, and the idea of the new young people plenary, but we also need to think about what structures we have on the Board of Deputies that prevent them wanting to get involved. Young people, women, people from outside of London, all of these different structures. What do we do to make people feel more willing to really engage with the Board of Deputies? So it's a great start, but actually it leads into an issue about structure.
Thank you, Laura. I absolutely agree. And can I just say, it would be remiss of me not to congratulations on being recognised in the King's first birthday Liz, congratulations on your CB. If we can have a quick round of applause, please, that'd be grand. Thank you. Robert.
Hello, Robert Stone, Finchley Reformed Synagogue. Unusually for me, this is not a hostile suggestion, but a suggestion. I note that I think it's great to be doing what you're aiming to do. However, I note that Phil Rosenberg from the Finance and Organisation Division's Engagement Committee spoke with some. There are lots of reservations and issues and so on. The Finance and Organisation Division, which represents the organisation of this board, were not consulted at all about this, and neither was the engagement working group of the Finance and Organisation Division. I would suggest that before you actually design the pilot, you talk to those of us who are elected by deputies to help to make sure that the organisation and structures work properly. Thank you.
Yeah, we absolutely need to work with the FNO on this. I think engagement needs to be done really in the round. Thank you. Guy.
Hi, my name's Guy. I'm head of campaigns at UJS, so I'm representing here today. A few things to say. Firstly, thank you so much to David and James for your work. On this policy, it's really important we get more young people involved in the boards and involved in the Jewish community more widely. I have two concerns. Firstly, I worry that very little actually unifies people under 35 and 18-year-olds concerns and 35-year-old concerns are very different and range really widely. So I'd be really interested in your answer, your perspective on that. Secondly, once this body is created of under 35 deputies, I worry that there'll be little engagement. I worry that people won't come. They're already coming to a plenary every 6 weeks, and further meetings might struggle to have people involved. So I'm wondering how you'll encourage people to come to these under 35 assemblies, and they're not dominated by just a few loud voices in the room.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important that it's not dominated by a few loud voices. And I hope that whoever is the first chair of that body is able to really bring people together. You're absolutely right about the 18 to the difference between an 18-year-old and 35-year-old in terms of their needs. I think I referred to that a little bit before, but we need to make sure that we're doing work there. And I hope that this body is also able to divide up its attention into those different groups. It's never going to be perfect. There's always another micro within every group. I'm sure that within the regional deputies, there's a big difference between those in the southwest and those in the northeast. But we try and do what we can to bring voices together, and then within those bodies, find ways to look after all of those needs and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Tresman, Finchley Progressive Synagogue. The last speaker had a very good point to make, that an 18-year-old has very different interests than a 35-year-old. And I would suggest also that over 64-year-olds have very different interests too. And when we last voted on limiting the age that you could continue to be a deputy, and this is where I do my turkey impersonation, because I'm not voting for Christmas. It was overwhelmingly defeated that there should be an age limit. And if you want to bring down the average age of the deputy to something where everybody's interests are the main concern, then I suggest that we put that in the mix as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Again, this isn't about pushing anyone out. It's about trying to bring people in. It's about encouraging and empowering, not about trying to remove anybody. Absolutely, across the board. I'm going to be told to shut up in a second. It's really important that people across all age categories, all of whom have something to bring, are able to say. Marie.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And can I thank all of you in the room and online? Thank you. Thank you very much. It was good that everybody felt that they could have their say. Could I ask for the resolution to go on screen, please? Because we're then going to have a show of hands in the room and at home. And when you have your show of hands, if you're in favour, let's wait for the resolution there, you will be putting up your green card.
If you're in favour.
If you're in favour. So I can't actually. Yeah, thank you. I want to be able to read this.
If you're in favour, hands up. Should we just, if you're in favour, hands up?
Or should I not read the resolution?
Hi, deputies. This is Sarah. Can I ask you please to vote?
Okay,
Motion
those in
is up
favour, can you
online
put up your
on the
green
screen. You
card?
should all be able to see it. Can I
They're
ask you
going to now be
please to
taken
raise your
in,
virtual
and
hand
Sarah
in
Radifat
favour
will be
of the
doing
motion?
the same process
Um,
online.
Okay. A couple more minutes, a couple more seconds.
You voted in favour?
I did.
I'll take it. No, it's been taken incorrectly.
Yeah, but we've got enough.
Has everybody, I'm just making sure that everybody has raised their hand on Zoom. Um,
I think Robert.
a few people haven't yet raised their hand, but then I'm presuming you might be against the motion. So I'm happy to wait for another second or two.
But we'll wait till then.
I'm just going to the end of the screens.
Now against.
Okay, some people have got their, can you not put your, can I ask that you put your
Thank
virtual
you. Can I just
hand up,
ask,
please?
is there anybody in the room
If you, do you know
or
how to do that?
online
If you go
who's against?
to, it would just be easier from a vote because then it comes up on the screen, you see, if you can put your virtual hand up. I will explain to you how to do it. It's, if you click on, no, not yet, no. If you click on more and then you've got reactions and then there will be a virtual, because you've got pictures, you've got a, yeah, thank you. I can see a few more going up now. Thank you. If you can all please do that, it's just much easier because then we get an absolute exact, okay, all right, just let me take a, yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Can we take all the virtual hands down, please? Can we take all the virtual hands down, please? Thanks. And okay, and anybody against the motion, please? Is there anybody online on Zoom against the motion? Against the under 35 motion? Anybody else? I have a couple of hands gone up. Is there anybody else? Okay, let me just take a screenshot of that. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to mute myself again, take my camera off, and we'll rejoin the room. Thank you.
Again, this is a proposal as opposed to a motion, so we're not going to be taking amendments. However, once this body is set up, again, things are going to be able to change, you know, ongoing, and we'll be able to see what happens at the end of the trial. Thank you very much, Jerry.
And I think it's very important, as Robert said, that the pilot also consults the relevant divisions in the F&O, and Robert has also done some very good work, which I'd like to thank him for recently as well. So I think it's important that the project gets underway straight away, but that there is consultation, and it is a pilot, which means if something doesn't work, there may be a change. So I hope everybody can just see how it goes, but thank you.
Marie, 96.
Okay, thank you. We have a result very quickly. 96 in favour and 2 against. So it's passed. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And just to explain, we have a motion for electronic voting at the end of the meeting. So the cards are going to be handed back to you again. Thank you. Coming on to the, well done. Coming on to the president's statements. Let's do some muzzle toffs. 90th birthday, muzzle toff to Daphne, mother of Bromley, Deputy Joe Millis. Muzzle toff to Michael Mullings on his wedding. Muzzle toff to Ben Lewis, Deputy for FRS, on his marriage in July. Muzzle toff Laura Marks, Deputy for Adwo, on your CBE in the King's birthday honours list, and to our long-standing deputy, Jack Vassar, who got an MBE, our long-standing deputy previously for Ajax. You may have noticed that we're very quiet today without Andrew Gilbert, and we want to give condolences to him because he is attending with several deputies the stone setting for his mother. So we wish him long life. And once again, we mourn the loss of Lord Stanley Clinton Davis and Sir Ben Helfcott, and our deepest sympathies go to the families. Thank you. So moving on to the President's statement. I want to draw to your attention again the situation in relation to the Glastonbury Festival, which is one of the largest festivals in the UK. And the board felt that it needed to act decisively when The Big Lie, the film, was going to be broadcast, orchestrating Jeremy Corbyn's downfall. And we are very pleased that that film was not shown by the organisers. No, hang on. It wasn't shown formally by the organisers, but I'm going to just let me come on to this. But I understand that in a tent, somebody, not the festival, it wasn't the festival organisers that showed the film, that there was some sort of showing, but we don't know who that was. And that was evident that there was a showing with some people in a tent because it was put out on a video in Twitter. But the organisers of the festival decisively did say that they were not going to be showing that film. And it's obviously unacceptable that somebody decided to show it in a tent. And it's very, very difficult to have prevented that. There were, yes, if you look on Twitter, you'll see it looked like there were about 30 or 40 people in a tent. So somebody did decide to show it, but it wasn't, to their credit, the organisers of the festival. And I think it's very important that they agreed to make sure that that wasn't shown, but it wasn't an ideal result that there was somebody that was able to show it. But can I stress it was in a tent, and it did look like a very small number of people, but we all as a community suffered huge disquiet at the prospect of that film being shown. Equally, as a community, we were very concerned about Roger Waters. In fact, this must be one of the only occasions when key representatives from the Conservative Party, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats all wrote letters back to the Board of Deputies condemning Roger Waters wanting to be able to peddle his hatred. Michael Gove, Secretary of State for Levelling Up, the leader of the Labour and Liberal Democrat parties, they all spoke out very, very powerfully. Just to quote again from the President's statement, Michael Gove said that the government is clear that everyone has a clear and fundamental right to freedom of speech and artistic expression, so long as they remain in the boundaries expressed by law. Keir Starmer, he said, the leader of the Labour Party, Pink Floyd has clearly espoused anti-Semitic views. He said they were highly disturbing. Many people will think of Roger Waters as famous for being a member of one of the most important bands in history, but he is now more synonymous with spreading deeply troubling anti-Semitism. And that is why I believe this show should not be allowed to go ahead. Sir Ed Davey also condemned Waters' remarks, saying that anti-Semitic rhetoric like this is completely shameful and totally unacceptable. We had a huge amount of support from the community and from deputies, and I want to commend the work of Penina Serrano in the Defence Division, who I know had been campaigning for a very, very long time on this. So it was important that as a community and with senior politicians that we made our objections known, and you can read more about the concerns which were attached to the President's statement. Coming on to the BDS bill, we know that the government has now published the bill, which has been known as the BDS bill for short, and that's going to prevent public bodies from allowing political or moral disapproval of foreign state conduct, influence, procurement decisions and investment decisions. And public bodies should not be, if they receive public funding, in a position to make unilateral foreign policy decisions by itself. This is something that's been supported by the Board of Deputies and of course the Jewish Leadership Council. And as a community, I understand that we have many and varied views. But it's my feeling that the majority of the community are very pleased that this bill is going to be presented. Other things that were important in the President's statement were the meetings that we had with Sir Mark Rowley. That was very important, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, and also with the Conservative Party Chair, Greg Hands, where we discussed strengthening processes to combat anti-Semitism. Sale of Nazi memorabilia is something that we are going to major on going ahead. That was also referred to at our annual general meeting of the APPG of British Jews. I'm sure that someone may have some questions or some comments to make. So I'm very happy to see the hands of people that want to speak. Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't see. Joe Millis, you can go to the stand, please. Phil, I'm just checking if there's anybody online. I'm sure there will be. Can you remember, please, to say your name and constituency? And if we have views that are different, let's be tolerant and hear people out. And the timer will be on for 1.5 minutes, which is what I think it's on for already. Thank you. Can we have the timer, please?
People are allowing in opposition to a film that would have attracted perhaps 30 people, which is now attracted more than double 30 people, possibly even 3 times 30 people, is a particularly clever move, let alone wise. The same with the BDS bill. Are we going to say that we are against boycotting China or big oil or big tobacco or big pharma? Are we going to say that we're against boycotting other states for doing what's done? Of course, people can make the moral choices. They vote for these people. I think it's, again, Board of Deputies is not being particularly wise here. It may be clever, but it's not wise. Thank you.
And we apologise to those people online because the first part of what Joe said couldn't be heard by those online, and we corrected the sound. But the gist of what was being said was that Joe was suggesting that the board had dug a hole by objecting to the film being heard. I think that's a fair summary. Thank you, Joe. Look, everybody's got an opinion, but I think the overwhelming majority of the community is very pleased that we took objection to this film. There's a lot of young, impressionable people at Glastonbury, and I think it's quite right that they set an example and that they didn't peddle hatred, and that they think that they're there for unity. Everyone, of course, has got their opinion, but my view isn't in that place. And I can only say that practically everybody that I've spoken to agrees with the stance on this issue that has been taken. But thank you. Next, online, I hope you can hear us. Layla Cumber. Then we've got Joe Charara, Gerald Fox, and Susan Pascoe.
Hi, my name's Leila Cumber.
Phil,
sorry.
And then Jonathan Brody.
Leila Cumber.
First, and then we'll have Layla Cumber. Okay, after Layla. Sorry, can you start Layla again so she has her 4.5 minutes?
Leila Cumber, Westminster United Synagogue. I just want to refer to Roger Waters. I find it somewhat surprising. There are many Jews in the music business, from the paper boy up to the promoters and whatever. I have not seen any opposition to Roger Waters from anybody in the music business, and I think that's dreadful. There are many Jews there. I don't think any one of them have been reported as opposing Roger Waters and his anti-Semitic outbursts.
I think that's a fair thing to say, and I'll take that away and do some research. But I think it's something that you've put forward that deserves looking at. So we'll come back to deputies. Thank you. Jay Tarara online. After Phil, sorry. Phil, can you go to the microphone? Thank you. It's just easier. Apologies. And I can see Denise Lester at the back. I've got you on my list.
Thank you, Madam President. Phil Rosenberg, Bronsbury Park Synagogue. First of all, I wanted to congratulate you and the whole team on the report. I think it shows the importance of the work the board does and you standing up for us. So thank you for that. Thank you also to your answer on my question on the President's statement, which was around Hindu-Jewish engagement. In addition to being the deputy of my synagogue, I'm also the Interfaith and Political Engagement Officer. And one of the great privileges we have is having the Neasden Temple as one of our local neighbours in Brent. And one of the things we've been talking about is the idea of holding a Hindu-Jewish Young Leaders Summit. And we've been speaking about what this might involve, but it occurred to me that it'd be really good not just to make this a Brent initiative, but perhaps to make this a national initiative. So I was wondering whether you, Marie, would meet with me. I've also had a brief conversation with our representative from the UJS. And yeah, Amanda, it'd be really great, because I think this is potentially really exciting, maybe for Interfaith Week in November.
Can I just say, from the time that I was the vice president, I was the first person to make contact with the Hindu temple in Neasden. We have an absolutely excellent relationship with them, and I've certainly worked very well with them since, and we had many lovely visits. And I know that Amanda will talk about that more when she gets to her division report. So I think that's a fair question for Amanda. Thank you very much. Jay Tarara, and I've just seen online Stav, so I've got you down. You've just put your hand up. Jay.
Thank you. Jay Tarara, Deputy for Manchester JRC. We've recently seen the furore caused by Roger Waters' odious concerts, and the Manchester JRC has been at the forefront of the condemnations of this renowned BDS supporter, who, amongst other things, embraces offensive, evocative Nazi imagery as a prop. The recent glorification and obsession with the Nazi era, unfortunately, is not confined to Roger Waters alone, but it can also be found openly and easily, as everybody can see, on the internet, Amazon, eBay, YouTube, Waterstones, and so on. This has gone on for too long and is becoming a threat to our community. I, for one, suggest a concerted campaign going forward in collaboration with international organizations such as that have the clout, such as the ADL, for instance, if we are to limit and eventually eradicate this plague of incitement to hatred and anti-Semitism. And I'm, for one, happy to be part, with others, part of a steering group for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Just to reconfirm, we've already announced at our annual general meeting for the APPG of British Jews that the addressing the sale of Nazi memorabilia will be addressed through the APPG. So we are going to take that up as a specific campaign. And we have already entered into a partnership with the ADL for a digital resource to go into schools, which should be ready now in hopefully a month or two, to try to combat anti-Semitism. And it's a very, very important partnership. But thank you very much, Jay, for your comments. I've got down as the next person, Gerald Fox. And then it will be Jonathan Brodie and then Denise Lester. and then Stav and Susan. Apologies if I've got anybody in the wrong order.
Yeah. President Marie, Gerald Fox, Bedfordshire Progressive Synagogue. I think you've got a very difficult task with Waters. And I tell you why. First of all, Pink Floyd is one of my favorite groups. And I've always dissociated myself with anybody who is anti-Semitic but has got talents in other directions. Wagner was a nasty anti-Semite, but some of his music is sublime. Chopin was a wonderful composer, but he was an anti-Semite. And wouldn't it be better perhaps to not challenge the whole group, not to try and get them banned, but each time he makes a statement, bring it to the attention of the authorities and try and get him prosecuted for making those sort of anti-Semitic statements. I'm sure if we challenged him every time he made that sort of statement, it would be stopped. And I really don't want to deprive people of the pleasures of music of a band like that, which are really very good. Thank you.
I think the recordings of Pink Floyd are clearly available for everybody to listen to. It is very difficult when people have real talent. There's also Roald Dahl, where there are such awful sentiments. But in this case with Roger Waters, to have the key leaders of all the political parties, and I understand in Germany they're looking at prosecuting him, the strength of feeling is just too great to just leave it at that. He's open and he's brazen about it. And I think it's our duty to the community to work very hard to make sure that this just doesn't happen. It's crossed a boundary, but that's not detracting from Pink Floyd's work. I was also in my day very fond of the songs, but he's gone beyond, and it just has to be challenged. And it's very rare for all key leaders in political parties to come out with statements like this. They were very firm, they were very strong and very robust. And I want to thank them all for their support. So thank you. Thank you. Next, can you come to the microphone, is Denise Lester. Then I don't want to get this wrong. Next, I've got Stab. It's going to be after that. Then I've got Susan Pascoe. Then I've got Penina Serrano, and then I've got Joy Wolf. Apologies if you are not in the right order. And there were two people. Could you come behind Denise so that you don't get three people now? That's fine. Right, fine.
Denise Lester, Southampton Synagogue, Roger Waters concert in Berlin and the UK concerts. I was offered a ticket for his concerts on the day. I politely declined. What I think are the following issues for the board is that when an artist uses their platform, their music, which music should be beyond religion and should be enjoyable as a vehicle to express views that are unacceptable and disturbing to the Jewish community and beyond to those who have a keen sense of history, then I think the board, in tandem with other organisations and politicians, should call them to account. And I think there needs to be a strategy there. So he won't be he may, which he's done. It's right that we debate it. It's right that we call it out. But we also have an educational role for the wider community, because my friend that offered me the ticket did not know of his views. And so there's a wider role that we need to play in educating the non-Jewish community. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for that. I'm going to take one person in the room and then one person online. And the last person to speak will be Lawrence Julius, who's just put his hand up. So the microphone is yours. Apologies if you're out of your order. Next will be Stav online, please.
Hi, I'm Reuben Simon, Deputy for LJ Wynetzer.
I'll be talking about the Economic Activities of Public Bodies, or the BDS bill, which LJY sees is a clear gagging order to free speech and non-violent protest. As one UJS activist put it, the board's support of the bill will pit Jews against other minorities and civil society activists in their fight for political and human rights. Indeed, the board's support of the government's bill has already sown discord amongst the British Jewish community. And I recently asked in a question to the President if the board would make it clear that they did not represent the views of the majority of British Jewish youth by supporting this bill. Personally, or frankly, I did not expect a positive answer, as the board so often must be seen to present a united view on these sorts of things. But what I take issue with was an answer that I felt to be stubborn and defensive, essentially, and I paraphrase, agree to disagree, but we will not make it clear to parliamentarians that large parts of the community are not behind us. It's great to see that the Under 35 Assembly motion was passed, but we need wider cultural shifts, as demonstrated by the answer to my question. So my question here is, how can the board today say that it is working to represent the views of Jewish youth when you are actively lobbying against our interests, as we have expressed so many times?
Thank you. The board is a democratic representative body, and we have been elected to represent the community, and there is overwhelming support in the community in relation to the BDS bill. Now, not everyone is going to agree. There are often situations where not everyone agrees in the community, but the consensus from the main community is that it's very grateful for the government to put forward this bill. And I accept that people, of course, are entitled to have their views, and we're a community of diverse views. But whenever we put things forward, we don't go and say, well, these people didn't agree. We reach a consensus, and the overwhelming consensus in the community is to support the bill. But I guess we'll hear from a few other people, but thank you for putting your views forward so well. Stav, you're next, and then it will be Jonathan Brodie, and then Susan Pascoe. You've been very, very patient. Stav.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm really glad that you mentioned earlier the large differences in opinion within the community about the recently proposed Economic Activity of Public Bodies bill. But today I have an invitation rather than a question, because since the bill was raised in the Queen's speech last year, there was a long string of questions asked by deputies representing a broad range of constituencies, challenging the board's unquestioning support of the bill. We asked the board about the impact of the proposed bill on human rights issues, such as the case of the Uyghur genocide that the board has campaigned on. We raised the dangers of non-differentiation between the internationally recognized borders of Israel and the OPT. We highlighted the wide interdenominational opposition to the bill amongst future leaders of the British Jewish community, as outlined by Ruben. These questions and more weren't answered adequately. So instead of adding to that long list of challenges to the board's unquestioning lobbying for the bill, I'd like to suggest something more constructive and invite you to an event we're hosting in 2 weeks' time on Wednesday, the 5th of July, with a range of leading speakers from Israel, the US, and the UK. I realize it's difficult to change our opinions on issues that, are so emotional for us, but I believe that it's important to raise this conversation and engage with it properly. We'll be discussing why all of the leading Israeli human rights organizations have asked the UK government to drop the bill. We'll outline the disastrous consequences of similar laws that have already been passed in the US, and we'll hear about the dangers that the bill poses to all of our civil rights here in the UK. So I invite all of you to join us for what's sure to be an insightful and comprehensive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Stav. I have to admit, I couldn't completely make out what you were saying, but I think you're clearly objecting to the bill. I'm not sure if you were suggesting there's a difference by reason of denomination. No, I wasn't. I couldn't. I'm really sorry. The sound is. It's not your fault. The sound isn't very easily. Did you hear?
Yeah, she was trying to be constructive, and there's an event on the 5th of July.
Ah, there's an event on the 5th of July. Sorry, I couldn't hear it, and Michael Wigan next to me couldn't. Yeah, can you let the board know, and then deputies can be told about it. But sorry, Michael and I couldn't hear it from this end. Okay, thank you. Jonathan Brodie, thank you. And after that will be Susan Pascoe, then in the room, and then will be Panina, Joy, and Lawrence.
Jonathan Brodie, Kingsbury Synagogue. Maria, I wanted to respond to something you said in your
initial comments in relation to the BDS bill. It's not something I want to express a view on the pros or cons of it, but you said that, and apologies if I'm misquoting you, that you had the feeling that the majority of the community were in support of the bill. And as you have responded to other speakers saying that the board is a democratic organisation, it would have felt more comfortable with me if you'd been able to say the view of the board as determined by plenary or the relevant division was in support of the bill, rather than just saying that, you know, that was your feeling, that how the community felt, if we are genuinely a democratic body. Thank you.
Thank you. I respect what you're saying. We are, I can only say that we are represented, democratically elected to represent the community. We have consulted also with the Jewish Leadership Council, and they are also in the same place in relation to the BDS bill. So I do accept that there are many and different and varied views. We saw this before in relation to issues in relation to Israel, which are very challenging. But I can only say that we here are elected to represent you, and I've had very few objections. Next, thank you for being very patient. Susan Pascoe.
Susan Pascoe, Israel Community. I want to make 2 points. First of all, on the BDS bill, sorry, Susan Pascoe, Israel Community, I'm not sure I said that. I wanted to applaud Marie and the Board of Deputies and their strong support for the bill. And the reason why is that the BDS movement undermines the legitimacy of Israel. It unfairly singles out Israel, and it ignores the complexities of the situation there. And the government can exempt countries like China and Russia. And we know that BDS encourages anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and we know anti-Zionism leads anti-Semitism. So this bill should have our full support. Second point I wanted to make is in relation to the Amnesty International report published this month on the 13th of June on civilian deaths and extensive destruction in the latest Gaza offensive. And it shows its unfair attacks on Israel. Again, it accuses Israel of committing war crimes when it was acting defensively and protecting its citizens. It ignores that it was initiated by Islamic Jihad, which is a recognized terrorist organization, and it was caused by the death of a terrorist in an Israeli prison. And Islamic Jihad operates within densely populated areas, as we know. My last point, can the board please?
Thank you. Sorry, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Please stop.
Come to the, thank you.
Madam Deputy, officers, sorry, it's Andrew Garfield, Highgate United Synagogue. I think we're all sort of concerned, particularly from my own experience with my children, about the sort of spread of anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist views among young people, and the fact that it's actually become quite fashionable in certain circles, particularly among sort of musicians and people in fashion and so on, to express very infantile views. I think that certainly I'm supportive of the fact that the board has taken some quite strong actions, both on the Glastonbury film and on BDS. However, what I did want to say was that I think where maybe we ought to be thinking a bit more cleverly is that the message doesn't really come across as to why people in the Jewish community feel so strongly about these issues. And it does actually fuel the idea that we're just flexing our muscles and using our political influence to ban views we don't approve of, rather than engaging in a broader debate which gets people to understand what it is why the Jewish community feels so vulnerable and so attacked and so defensive on these issues.
Thank you. I think the statements did make it clear. There was also an article in the Telegraph. These issues hopefully won't keep coming back, but I think plenty of people have expressed huge concern, but I take the point on board. Thank you. Penina Serrano, would you like to speak?
Hello, I'm Penina Serrano, National Reform Synagogue, Cambridge. I just wanted to make a comment. A gentleman said it would be a pity to ban Pink Floyd from playing. I just wanted to confirm that that wouldn't happen because Roger Waters is not a member of Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd disbanded. Pink Floyd have turned their back on Roger Waters. And the thing was with the incident with the Nazi gear, just to clarify, way back in the 1980s, when Pink Floyd were a group, they did in fact use it to, oppose fascism. But now Roger Waters uses it in a completely twisted way with, example, a picture of Anne Frank next to the poor Palestinian journalist who was accidentally killed in crossfire, Shireen. But to compare these two is absolutely incomparable. And also just to say that somebody mentioned about Nazi memorabilia. Yeah, there are too many musicians from the past and even now that use the gear, and it should be stopped. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Maybe if people want to, we can have a special deputy coffee evening to have a discussion on it. I think that lots of people do want to talk about it, and Penina, you explained it very well, and there is a huge responsibility using the name Anne Frank. I think these things are very, very important. So deputies want to have a coffee morning, we can do that by Zoom. I think that might be a useful way to engage. Thank you. Next up is Joy Wolf, then Lawrence Julius, and I apologise, we are out of time for me already, so that will have to be the end of questions. Joy Wolf.
Joy Wolf, Yeshurun Synagogue, Gatley. I was quite shocked at the speaker who thinks that that we should continue to support Pink Floyd because of the music. But thank you, Penina. That was very helpful to explain what the current situation is. My view is that we should have absolutely nothing to do with Roger Waters other than to oppose him as strongly as we possibly can. And what was really upsetting was that when it was on social media about his concerts, he had a huge amount of positive support. So we have a big job to do in countering him. I found it very helpful that somebody mentioned the Amnesty International situation. I think that's something that we should be going very forcibly against. This last report is absolutely outrageous. And I feel that we should be very active in, exposing what Amnesty International really is. And I was glad, Madam President, that you mentioned concern about some of the attitude of the board to Israel. I am very concerned that there is a large anti-Israel voice on the board that comes through, particularly from some of the younger people. And I think that is something that we need to address as well. And you only have to look at Yachat's Twitter, for example, to see that there isn't one positive thing about Israel. And it is Yachat that has influenced so many of our young people.
Thank
and
you,
unfortunately,
Joy. Sorry, you're timed out. Thank you. Sorry, Joy. Lawrence Julius.
Hello, everyone. Lawrence Julius Harif. Firstly, I'd like to thank the board for hosting Fighting Online Anti-Semitism to speak to them in London. They're a strategically important NGO with a really high success rate for taking down anti-Semitic tweets. They use the fact that it's in Israel and the moderators in Israel understand anti-Semitism. For example, on Twitter, they get 100% taken down, which compares with a few percent here. I encourage everyone to report any anti-Semitic contact on their website using their reporting tool, and you'll get much better success. I was also privileged to be invited to talk at the Knesset last week on the Committee on Anti-Semitism in the Diaspora. And they had all the media platforms there, and the big need the media platforms ask for is for legislation so they know where their boundaries are and where they stand. Can we please press for very tight boundaries in the online harms bill, etc., because that is what the media companies will react to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence, for what you said. I've just had clarification that Stav was talking about the event on the 5th of July. And this is where Yehuda Shul, co-director of OFEC, will be explaining why all of the leading Israeli human rights organizations have asked the UK government to drop the bill. On that day, the Board of Deputies also has a key event with the Archbishop of Canterbury and Simon Sebag Sharma, which is going to be a historic, sorry, Simon Sebag Montefiore, which is going to be a historic event for the community. So there's obviously a lot going on. Thank you very much. That's the end of the President's statement. So we're now going to carry on the agenda, and we've got 15 minutes each for the division report. So can we start please with defence? Over to Amanda.
I think the mic is on, is that right? Fantastic. So we've had a really spirited discussion just now around Roger Waters, and Marie also talked in her president's statement about the work that the division has been doing ultimately through our anti-Semitism in culture working group that is chaired by Penina Serrano. And so I just want to again thank Penina for all the work that she's done through that working group and through the division to keep us on track with what ended up as a pretty solid campaign against Roger Waters' vile anti-Semitism. The division has 8 working groups. So beyond the 16 people that were voted onto the division, we engage more than 30 other deputies on our working groups. And many of those working groups also have solid representation from young people. So for everybody that says that deputies don't have a chance to get engaged, I think you can see that from the work that we do on our division and the work that I know goes on in other divisions, that there are many ways that deputies can be engaged. We've talked earlier about how young people may not want to attend plenary meetings. They may be at the wrong time of day on the wrong day. But that's not the only way for deputies to be involved. And our working groups are one such way that deputies can be involved in the vast variety of activity that we're doing. One of the other working groups that we have beyond anti-Semitism in culture is our interfaith working group. Phil, I know that you're interested in the work that we're doing with Hindus. We have the interfaith working group reporting back to division at our next meeting. Please do come along because I'd be delighted to talk to you about it. I was with the Neasden Temple recently, and engaging more deeply with them was one of the things that we discussed. So really happy to talk that through, but it would be through the working group that is probably the best instrument to talk about that. The division report covers much of the work that we've been doing. Marie has covered much of the other work that the division has been doing. So I commend that report to you, and I'm very happy to take any questions that people may have, particularly interested to hear from people that haven't spoken already.
Well done.
Come on, guys.
Okay.
I kind of covered it
done.
all,
No,
but
it's okay.
if I have,
it happens. We've covered it all.
fantastic.
So well done.
Thank you very much.
But Amanda's here. Anyone who wants to talk to Amanda offline, I'm sure she'd be delighted to talk to you. So thank you, Amanda. We should have Edwin on Zoom. Are you there, Edwin, to present the community and education report?
I am, Madam President. I am on.
Thank you. And the floor is yours, Edwin.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a packed report, as always, and you can see from it what my division is. That we have very active people. I'm blessed with people who are actually doing a job of a chair rather than a participant. And thank you very much for all their contribution. I want to mention that we have 2 or possibly 3 vacancies in our division, and tomorrow we will have the details of how to stand. I know there is only 10 months left, but I can assure anyone who stands that there's plenty to do, and we will make sure that whoever wins the and get on the division. We'll be briefed almost instantly, and we'll have a task and a working group to work for the next 10 months, and still will manage to achieve what we would, whatever we would like to do. 10 months is a long time. So please stand up for the division and put your names forward. I want to also say one of the vacancies is a dear deputy, dear friend as well, is Louis Trott. And unfortunately, Louis could not be with us today. I want to pay tribute to him. I want to pay tribute for, he wasn't with us to the end because he's no longer part of the armed forces. But one of the incredible things he did was the bringing along Armed Force Covenant, which we all voted for and which passed on unanimously. And Louis, before completely leaving us, is organizing a signing ceremony with senior representative from the Defense Ministry, and we hope that many of you will join for that ceremony, details of which will be announced later. Next meeting in July, we will focus on bringing a report on PICOA, which is something that the whole board, every one of us, should be very proud. Not many people actually in the community know that the board has been incubated this incredible, almost like an Ofsted, inspecting Jewish studies in Jewish schools and giving reports, thorough reports. This is a credit to the whole community, and the board has been supporting it exclusively over the years, and we should mention it to our communities, our synagogues. We would like to encourage everyone to help us making sure that this body, this PICOA, actually carries on its work. We will discuss the challenges it's facing in the next division. Now, I also wanted to pay tribute to many people in the division, but I will take questions. Just wanted to mention Judith Princely, who is organizing a debate and a presentation in the next division on mental health and Jewish care and how the communities should know about it. Also, Andrew Gilbert, who enchanted us with actually a fantastic. He took the last three censuses, 2001, 2011, and 2021, and analyzed it. We were mesmerized. We had over 50 people in a weekday, mesmerized to the end. So thank you, Andrew, and wishing you a long life as well. I now would like to take questions, Madam President, if anybody is around wanting to ask anything. I cannot see on the floor, of course, so you may like to help me.
You've got Lee Dworkin online and Sheila Giwob online.
I'll take Lee. Is Lee with that? Lee.
Yep, this is Lee Dworkin from Maidenhead Synagogue. So I'm also head of the racial inclusivity subgroup of Edwin's division. And I see I don't have much time, so I just wanted to share a little bit about the survey we've done on the implementation of the racial inclusivity report by Stephen Bush. The completion rate so far is 83 responses out of approximately 300 deputies. So Edwin had a very ambitious target of 80 to 90%, and you'll see we're actually at somewhere closer to 28%. We asked a number of questions, just some highlights from it, and you know, do you have any members in your community who see themselves as Jews of color? Slightly more than half, 54% said yes, 45% said no. Has anything been done in your community since the publication of the commission? Yes was 44% and no was 53%. So of the ones who do have Jews of colour in their community, about 43 responses, under 20 have no implementation at all, which is a bit of a shame. And we've gone into the survey to find out why. Some are not bad reasons, such as we're already completely inclusive in our community. And we've also...
Thank you.
Can I comment on this, Madam President? Is that what we're trying to do? I think we were actually 83 so far is a good number, and we would welcome a little bit. I would say another 80 will make us very, very happy. What we wanted to do is not whether you actually just have done something or not, but we would like everyone to actually raise it on the board council of their synagogues, like I have done, like Lee have done, and to have it as a point of debate for one of the next few meetings to say, are we in a position to take on some of the points raised as for implementation, and what are they? So basically, do become partners with the board on this. We're doing the same thing with the Rep Council, and we're asking them to choose few points from the points recommended by Stephen Bush to actually take it on nationwide. Thank you very much, and I'll take Sheila now.
Hi, Edwin. Thank you. Sheila Gewald, Cardiff United Synagogue. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Edwin, especially for mentioning Pekuach, of course, started by Jeffrey Leader over 25 years ago and recognised as the Jewish Inspection Service by Ofsted. And thank you, Lee, for talking about your amazing work as chair of the Jewish Genealogical Society to my heritage group. And thank you, Edwin, for encouraging people to join this amazing division. And I want to say that even if you don't get elected, you know, some people do a lot of work and for whatever reason they're not successful at being elected. We have observers who come to my education working group meetings. And again, if you email me or go through Sarah, we can get you onto our next meeting, which is at the beginning of July. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who's been helping fill the Sacre spaces and all the amazing work, you know, communication, all the things we've been talking about with Roger Waters and Richard Sharp cartoons and all the terrible things that people who attack us. Some people have their own agenda. There is a lot of misunderstanding and ignorance about who we are and what we do. And communication is so key. And this is work that I'm trying to achieve with all the wonderful people who help me. So thank you, Edwin, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm done, Madam President, unless you can see anyone else with a question.
Yes, we've got Jerry Lewis, and whilst Jerry's coming up to the stand, I want to say not last Shabbat, but the one before, I had the privilege to go to Wolford Road Synagogue, which was celebrating its 111th anniversary. I was in very good company. There was the Chief Rabbi, Lord Levy, and Vanessa Feltz. And it's one of the most diverse communities that I have ever seen. And there's lots of lessons that I think could be learned from a trip to Wolford Road, which isn't a member of the board, but it really is a diverse, amazing community. Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis Hampstead. I wasn't going to rise yet again. However, just want to tell deputies, whenever I have the occasion to phone up a hospital or a bank, that you got put through to press 1, press 3, press whatever it is. My first question to whoever answers the phone, are you a human or are you a computer? And I often get back somebody saying they're a computerized human. My question based on that, and I know, Edwin, you are a real person, not AI influenced. What are we doing at the board about AI? I raised this once before. I raised it with Amanda, no complaints there. But Edwin, this comes into your purview as well in the board. We do need to get with what's going on outside the board. It's becoming a very worrying situation. The number of people behind AI have raised questions about controlling it and where it's going to take us. And we are more susceptible than most others to having our views and our heritage questioned. So I ask, what are we doing as a board? Can I suggest there's an urgent review by the officers to produce a subcommittee of both divisions, defence and yours, so that we can get this thing
Thank you, Jerry. Can I just say that the lawyer in me knows that AI is something that is definitely here to stay, and it doesn't need to be addressed. I'd raised this also at the World Jewish Congress when I looked up. There wasn't a definition of anti-Semitism, but there has to be a huge regulatory framework in the UK to address the challenges of AI, and there is a lot going on behind the scenes. Last week I attended a course from the Good Faith Foundation with numerous faith leaders, and the sole purpose of this course was in relation to the values that different faith leaders have, which could then be expressed around regulatory frameworks. And I think it would be something that cuts across probably the defence division rather than a communal matter. But I think it definitely is something that we should be talking about. But it really is a huge regulatory challenge. And I think I read something where Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, had said that he wants the UK to be the centre of the regulatory challenges.
Madam President, can I interrupt? There's another question, and your time is out. You've been timed out. Johnny, can I ask you? Can you say?
Sorry, do you have anything you want to add to that, Edwin?
No, I'm saying Johnny Weinberg has put his a hand up, and I didn't want to deprive him from my time. Johnny, would you please unmute?
Thanks, Edwin. On a different subject in terms of the census, which was mentioned, I have done some work on this. For the 16 wards with the largest population of Jewish residents, there's a significantly higher portion of people not stating their religion, and there's a correlation with areas of Orthodox Jewish populations. Effectively, there's a huge undercounting of many thousands of Jewish people in the census. I know that there were meetings on this, and I know that in some areas we're talking about double the number of people who haven't answered that question. What are the board doing on this? Where is it going in terms of talking with ONS?
We are. This is a constant debate, Johnny, and I can assure you this is something that we are not. We're not left it behind. We will not be allowed to leave it behind, because we have Ephraim and Jerry on our necks and on our and we love him. We love them and we welcome them, and they keep this very much alive. And with Andrew Gilbert, we can rest assured that if you want to join these debates, let me know. And but these are ongoing. Okay, I'm done.
Amanda would just like to come back on that.
Yes, I just want to pick up that issue. Thank you, Johnny, for asking the question on census. I mean, everyone was transfixed by the work that Andrew did to share with us the impact of the 21 census on the Jewish community, but completely take your point. And this will be a piece of work that will be done in concert between the Defence Division and the Communities and Education Division, because any changes that are going to be made need to cover both aspects of it. And watch this space, because we had some good news come through last week around one large institution who was given public body support for them including ethnicity as well as religion on their data collection. So our messages are coming through.
Thank you. And I've just received a message that I should also say that I was absolutely delighted to attend the 200th anniversary of Cheltenham Synagogue, which was fantastic, and to congratulate Leonard Bazar for all the work that he does. Thank you. David.
Thank you very much. I will keep this as brief as possible. The things that I'd really like to pick up, we had a great meeting with the ADL a couple of weeks ago. We also had a meeting with the Foreign Secretary where we brought up, as we always do when we meet with legislators, the IRGC, and our belief that they should be prescribed. I wanted to say that next week I'm going to the Interparliamentary Task Force on Online Anti-Semitism in Brussels. I went last year in DC, and it's a really good and important task force that brings the tech companies together with legislators and people from across the Jewish community. And finally, and away from those things, I just want to give a quick plug to our Israel mission. Now, we are below where we would like to be on signups to the Israel mission. The agenda that we have planned, I think, looks really great, and we really want for this to be able to go ahead. In order to do so, we need people to register. So there's a week left to register. Please do. And I would say once again that we have set aside quite a large sum of money to give subsidies where that is necessary for those who want to come on the trip but feel like it's just it's too expensive. Something I very much understand when we're in all together in this cost of living crisis. Please do send us an email. We'll do what we can. We really don't want money to be the reason that people don't come. So with that, I'm happy to go over to questions, and I see there is one online. Is that Paul Edlin? Cool.
Can you hear me? Paul Edlin, Glasgow Jewish Representative Council. At the last board meeting, I asked you a question about the European Jewish Congress and the board's resignation from that. My question this week is, at the last meeting, you said that the board has never done more for Eastern Europe than at present. And I'd like to ask you how much engagement you've had with the leaders of Ukraine, Moldova, and such countries in Eastern Europe since in the last couple of months. Particularly, my concern at the moment is that Ukraine, the Jews of Ukraine are suffering badly, especially over the bombing of the dam, which is creating huge distress. Now, I realize that World Jewish Relief and other organizations are working on that, but the board has a political role to play. I know the World Jewish Congress has a role and is doing something, but the European Jewish Congress, which was co-founded by the board, has a role to play. And I certainly would like to see the critical situation in Ukraine being addressed more strongly by the board, unless you can tell me specifically with the number of man hours that you're spending on this and the number of engagements you've had. I would like to know what can be done more in Eastern Europe. And my suggestion is that the board should look to rejoining the European Jewish Congress as soon as possible, in actual fact, as it co-founded it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Paul. The situation with the EJC hasn't changed since we last spoke. It's not that we don't want to join with our European partners, and like I've said, we do a lot of work with them, but we feel that it's very important that we aren't associated with an organization that has the problems that it still has. I hear what you're saying about Ukraine. I know Marie's got something to say in a second as well. We probably could and should be doing more. I know that it's on all of our minds all of the time. And if you have specific ideas about what more we could do, I'd love to hear them. Do feel free to email me, CC in our International Relations Officer, David Robinson. But Marie, did you want to add something as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that at the World Jewish Congress, they actually haven't taken a position because they're really, really worried about the safety of hundreds of thousands of Jews that remain in Russia. And in fact, Phil might want to come to the stand because with Phil, I went to see the Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt, and he also spent a long time telling me that people haven't highlighted the dangers and the risks for these Jews and the anti-Semitism that they are also facing. And these are really very, very difficult issues. I was fortunate enough to see many of my colleagues during the week at the Claims Conference. We actually went out for a very nice dinner with Ronald Lauder as well, and had an opportunity to carry on discussing and working together. We are all really very conscious of the terrible situation. We have another meeting coming up of the World Jewish Congress, and in my role of Commissioner for Gender Equality and Inclusion, I've certainly got many communities that are part of the European Jewish Congress that are also going to be playing a role. And I think we're a very close group of leaders. But I think Phil should come and explain what Rabbi Goldschmidt has actually said, because I think that it is something that should at least be highlighted.
Yes, and I think, David, you're absolutely right. Where we can do more, we should. I mean, there are a number of organisations, and Paul mentioned World Jewish Relief, but the Conference of European Rabbis has also been supporting rabbis throughout Europe in terms of their response to welcoming Ukrainian refugees from there. And there are lots of different ways that we could potentially blow our support into those kinds of initiatives, either through funding or raising them up. But I think it's an ongoing issue, and we should do all that we can to support it.
Thank you very much, Phil, Marie. Rick Cooper, I think you had your hand up. Do you want to go next?
Rick Cooper, Portsmouth and South Sea Hebrew Congregation. Thank you, David and colleagues, for an excellent report as always. Just a tiny little thing that I'm hoping is actually a typo right at the bottom, section 5. It says, David Robinson met with representatives of the FCDO Middle East Peace Protest Desk. Now, I'm hoping that that's a typo for process, because if there is indeed a desk at the Foreign Office dedicated to protesting against peace in the Middle East, we're in deep trouble.
It is, of course, a typo. Yes, I'm being warned against making a joke about MI6. No, yes, it's very much a typo. We apologise for that, and we will endeavour to ensure that typos don't make themselves onto their next report.
Yeah, and we do read everything very carefully, and we've got a fantastic deputy who also reads everything for us. So it's very rare that we have a typo like that. So many apologies.
Was that Brian? Yeah.
I'd just like to say a tribute to Louis Trop on behalf of Ajax. I'm Brian Bloom, Ajax, as you know. Louis has been a great colleague, a great guy to work with, and we're sorry to have lost him. On that, may I say, David, that we have many under 35s within our organization, Ajax, stroke our sister organization, Armed Forces Jewish Community. We will be very pleased to put that out to our community and to ask for people to come forward to serve on that committee. Amanda, may I just say something about AI? As you're probably aware, my daughter is the Senior Communications Officer for the Department of Computer Science at Oxford University. Please feel free to contact her about AI. She does know.
Thank you very much for that, Brian. I mean, that is great. And on Ajax, if I can add, it was really good to see Ajax represented at the Armed Forces Flag Day in Guildhall Yard earlier this week. It was great to see the flag flying with the others. So please pass on my thanks to the rest of the organisation for that as well.
Thank you very much,
Brian. Joy.
Joy Wolf, Assurance Synagogue. David, did we or should we have engaged with Ryanair over the announcement about landing in Palestine and a passenger being threatened with arrest if they continue to complain?
Sorry, I didn't really get the question.
Yes.
Michael?
We did follow the issue, of course. I noticed that Ryanair sent out an apology straight away. So I think we felt that it wasn't really worth us throwing in our oar as well. But you know, you're right to raise the point, Joy. It was a very, very unfortunate incident.
Yeah, sorry, I missed some of the keywords in that question. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Michael. And thank you, Joy. Are there any other questions, either online or in the room? In that case, please to hand over to... No.
Thank you. So Michael Ziff is not here today. He's on the Maccabi fun run. So good luck to him and everybody who's going to do that challenge. And we are going to invite the Vice Chair of the FNO, Sid Brahm, to come and to give the report. So welcome, Sid.
President. Different view from this side. We've been at the top table before. Yes, hello. Right. So Sid Braham from Barnet Synagogue. As Maria said, the Vice Chairman of the FNO. Michael sends his apologies, and as the President has said, he's fun running for Maccabi. Can I also, in a couple of seconds, welcome from my own shul, Joel Fearstone, as his first appearance today, just been appointed as the Barnet's Under 35 Observer. You have before you, folks, at least I hope you have it before you, your the FNO report, and I'd like to highlight four points, please. One is the audited accounts. They are currently out with what we call FROG, which is the Financial Review and Oversight Group, for their thoughts and comments, and subject to sign-offs not only from them, but from the executive and, of course, the auditors. It's the plan we're on course to present the audited accounts at the July meeting. They do not make happy reading, ladies and gentlemen. It was a terrible year, and I'm afraid that 2023 is not looking any better. It's operationally looking even worse. I won't go into details today, but there's a reforecast taking place currently, and it's looking at major pruning of some numbers. We've got to get on and deal with the structural deficit. The third point I want to highlight is the communal contribution, where the trend, my friends, is not positive. If you look at the report, the numbers are a little bit behind, but the trend is, I'm afraid, on the downslope. We're normally at this time of the year in positive territory. The communal contribution receipts are front-end loaded in the calendar year, so January, February, March are the big months, and they tail off during the year. That's the normal trend. So to be behind now, I'm afraid, is not good news. And let me just say this, please, that every single deputy here in the hall or on Zoom, every one of you, from whatever constituency you represent, is an ambassador for the board. And in that role, I'm asking you, please, to check that you pay the communal contribution. It's £30, put another way, 60 pence a week. You know, you can't afford not to pay. And if you don't pay, how can you encourage others in your constituencies to pay if you don't? So please look at your I would say checkbooks. I don't think you have checkbooks these days, but look at your financial records. Make sure you have contributed, and please ask others in your network to contribute. And let me say this week we happen to identify a represented shul who have paid in one year in the last 11, they have paid a modest amount, which bears no relation to their membership. They're 10 blank years for the communal contribution. I'm not going to name anybody, but please look at your own shul records. If anybody wants any details, please contact me. And I would also like to mention Phil Rosenberg, whose working group is urgently working to look at future funding to try and secure a better base going forward. And finally, the fourth point in the report, well, no better person to do so than Robert Stone. Robert, please, with your permission, Madam. Sure.
this from two working groups, the organisation and the risk working groups. In November last year, the F&O division raised a serious issue raised by the lawyers of the board, which is the liabilities of individual deputies. And we proposed an investigation of how the risk could be mitigated. The key issues are judgment liabilities, particularly in case of libel. The good news is that the issue has now been resolved. The level of potential liability was lower than was at first thought, and a method has been found which we are advised will include all deputies in the Foundation's insurance policies. This is thanks to outstanding work by Colin Grazin and Adrian Cohen, who have identified a solution to the problem. The bad news is that this issue took 6 months to resolve, thanks to the constant sidelining of the F&O and its working groups. This process raises issues about the governance of the board, which are currently being discussed, and we hope to report back to you about that some other time. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Right, questions? Do my best to answer. Jerry, your question's out. Any on the Zoom? No?
I think we ought to give a big hand to Sid, actually. And not only did Sid come to the front, he's been really honest about the finances of the board. And I think that's a very important discussion, because we know we're in very difficult times and it is going to have a big impact on the board. And we need to all come and consider other ways of raising money, whether it's legacy campaigns, making sure our synagogues pay the contribution is just one part of it. Because everybody, I'm sure, whatever you think about the views that are expressed here, we're a board family, and we know as a community that since 1760 we've advocated our views. So I think it is something that we really need to try to make sure that we get as much money as we can. But long term, we're going to have to come up with other strategies. But I want to thank Sid. That's very good that you've come, and we're all very grateful. And I'm sure you're prepared to take questions offline as well. I'm just being handed a piece of paper.
That's not for you, no.
Okay, I shall, thank you. You can stay, you're very welcome. I shall read the piece of paper. We're having a good day today, after all.
We're not that type.
Jerry has a point of order on item 9 of the Constitution. I need to know, can you ascertain the point of order, please? Because that's the agreement. We have a protocol, so we'll stop the streaming, perhaps, and the protocol is that you ascertain it.
It's on the motion when we get to it, but Jerry has had it.
Is it objecting to the motion?
It's objecting to a point on Constitution, so you have to hear it.
Well, I'd like to hear it. I'd actually like for you to actually determine exactly what it is, and then I can consider it rather than by doing it just on the hoof, if you don't mind.
It's completely clear. I told him exactly what it is. When you finish the finance report, yes. Well done to you, sir. This proposed change to the Constitution, very important, and I agree it's got to be discussed, is in complete breach of our own Constitution. Clause 35 specifies the number of days notice to be given, and also it requires the consent of the executive unless it's in an emergency. I see no emergency, therefore this cannot appear on today's agenda. It certainly can appear in July's agenda, provided you give sufficient notice. You're supposed to give 20 days notice. By giving that notice, you give opportunities for amendments. None of that's been done. Now, when I introduced postal voting, which I did many, many years ago, we gave proper notice. We had to. This hasn't been done. You're the chairman of the Constitution Committee. You should know about these things. You can't allow this to come through without proper consultation and abiding by the rules of the board. They're there for a very good reason. You need prior notification. We need time to consider what they're suggesting and if there are any failings in it, how we can amend it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for explaining that. I understand that there are a couple of vacancies for deputies to become involved. There are 5 vacancies on the division. I'm just going to ask a question of Michael. Has 20 days notice been given? Tony. And then I will come back with my response. That's why it might have been better to understand what the point was before, but go on.
The resolution on item 9 of the agenda today is simply to make the affairs of the board effective. If we don't accommodate the fact that we can have motions dealt with some of the people in the room and others not in the room, we won't be able to operate at all. So, Jerry, I'm afraid we've just got to be practical. There's nothing improper about what it is we're doing with the resolution on item 9. And let me finish.
Can we please
have finish? It's a resolution pretty well identical to resolutions we've been passing pretty well every time there's been an election coming. We've needed to pass an election. Sorry, not pass an election. We've needed to pass a resolution so as to permit the voting to take place. Without that, we'd be stymied. We won't be able to move on. So we've just got to be practical. The fact that we are being practical is what makes the board work.
Thank you. Sorry, can I respond? Thank you. Can everybody please remember we are a board family. Let's talk to each other nicely if we can. Look, times have changed. The pandemic has made it much more difficult for people to attend in person, and we're all working through Zoom. And the Charity Commission will also understand this. And we are a democratic organisation. And if deputies think that we shouldn't have it on the agenda today and it shouldn't be passed, we're going to know in a minute when we ask for a show of hands. I don't think that deputies should have their democratic rights taken away from them to be able to join a division because a longer period of notice is given. I think deputies will vote with their feet if they think there is a potential breach. There's a hand that's gone up.
Richard Sassoon, S&P. I'd like to query whether this is actually a constitutional amendment or a straight motion. And if it's not a constitutional amendment, then the notice period doesn't apply, and therefore we can vote on it. But my question would be, if it's a motion on being able to vote online, is that just a vote of the people in the room, or do the people online get a vote as well? Because at the moment, actually that would be covered by previous votes, but I'd like to know what the duration of this policy, of this motion is going to be, because it doesn't seem to have a sunset clause.
Thank you very much for that. It's a motion, it's not a constitutional amendment, and it's a motion for the purposes of allowing deputies that want to stand for election onto the forthcoming vacancies of the division. That's its purpose, and I suggest that Tony now has the floor back and you put the motions back on screen. Tony, over to you. Thank you for the point of order. Sorry, Colin, over to Colin, but thank you for the points of order that have been made. Thank you. Hopefully Colin will be online. Or in the room. Yes, he was in the room. Oh, Colin, there you are, hiding away. All over to you.
For what it's worth, I'm the draftsman of the whole resolution, so you can blame me. Secondly, Tony is quite right. This resolution is exactly the same as previous resolutions which have gone through at least 3 times, except that it says June 2023 rather than September 2022 or whatever. It's an unfortunate fact that the resolution is necessary because the actual constitution and standing orders were drafted before anybody had heard of electronic voting. We've now moved on to electronic voting, but the actual documents have not been changed for reasons which I don't propose to go into. So this is where we are, and it's not perfect, but I think it's practical, and I would certainly endorse it. The 3 paragraphs you see there are a summary of the whole document. You have the whole document. I would commend the document to the House, as they say in other places, and I hope that you will support it so that people can stand for election. My pleasure.
I think there's 2 people that, thank you, that had their hands up. Do they want to speak in relation to this? I think I saw briefly Karen Newman, and I didn't unfortunately notice who else there was. Is there anyone? Gillian? Does anyone want to speak? No? Okay, we're going to go to the vote. Right, you should all had your
All in favour?
your cards. I haven't got one, unfortunately, have I?
Okay, hi deputies online on Zoom. It's Sarah again. Oh, you've already raised your virtual hands. Well done. Okay, there are some people that haven't raised their virtual hands. I'm presuming that you are against the motion, but please bear with me. Before I need to take a screenshot. Is there anybody else raising? This is for in favour of this voting electronic voting for board meetings. Anybody else wishes to raise their virtual hand in favour? No. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. I'll take the hands down now. And can we do anybody voting against this motion, please? Any raised hands against? So we do not want electronic voting. Anybody voting against? There are anybody putting their hands up against? Okay, all right. I think that closes the vote. We'll regain the meeting. Thank you very much.
We're just waiting for the number online. It's coming. $71 for and none against. Thank you, and good luck to deputies that are standing for election. We look forward to joining you onto the divisions. I think it's 3 in CED, 1 in international, and 1 in defence. 1 in F&O. Apologies. Okay, well, good luck to all the candidates. I hope I didn't miss anyone that had their hand up before. If I did, you're welcome to speak. That's it? No, thank you. I want to thank everybody for today's meeting. I think it's been very good-hearted. We've covered a lot of ground. There's still a lot of interest in what's going on, and very happy to arrange a coffee mornings for further discussions. And we are really asking you, if you want to eat the croissants at the back of the room, you can see Andrew Lee there asking deputies. And can I thank board staff and the tech team? Thank you for all your hard work. Let's give them all a hand. Thank you, staff, all online as well. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you soon, and we hope that you have a lovely day, and good luck to everybody on the fun run. Thank you.